Hello and welcome back to Mindset Matters. Today we are talking about the fact that you are overstimulated. It's in a lot of ways your fault and how to fix it so it's not ruining your whole life, okay? We're going to talk about social media, talk about being intentional with the ways that you're living your life, reflection, who the heck do you want to be, how do you want to be spending your time, and things that I started doing to help combat the feeling of being overstimulated and just like being overwhelmed with the overload of information that I was consuming. So let's jump into it. All right, so we're going to talk about overstimulation. And one thing I think that is really interesting about this word is it's kind of this buzzword that is being used more commonly now, whereas in the past I've only really heard it when thinking about talking about people with maybe ADHD, people on the autism spectrum. In an education setting, we would talk about it for those reasons. But I feel like more and more we're hearing this word, overstimulation. I'm overstimulated. Adults can be overstimulated. Everyone can be overstimulated. And so I want to explore kind of what that means and how I think that you are doing it to yourself and how to kind of combat that. So let's talk about like what is overstimulation first of all. So one definition I found that I liked was from a website called Therapy with Olivia. And she wrote that overstimulation or sensory overload is when your senses are just completely overloaded with information, making it difficult or sometimes near impossible to fully process the information you're receiving. So to me, overstimulation is there's so much information coming at you at one time that you can't really process what's going on. And sometimes you take a moment, you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't handle the situation. An example I have of this is definitely in teaching. I would use this word so often now. Now that I know the word and I understand it a little bit more, I feel like as a teacher, there's so many times when I'm overstimulated because maybe the class gets a little bit crazy and then I have like 5 different students coming up and asking me questions, and then there's an announcement and I'm trying to answer an email at the same time, and it's like, oh my goodness, slow down. There's too much information, too many things kind of coming at me at once. So that's my personal example of overstimulation. And the other thing I think about when I think of overstimulation is like social media or over-consuming things online, reading too much online news, being on social media and just scrolling to a point where your brain can't properly process all of the information. And it's something that you start thinking about like hours later. I personally have to put my phone away quite early in the evening because if I'm scrolling on my phone right before bed, like I can't sleep. It's like my brain can't turn off all of the things I just saw. I don't know if anyone else has had this problem. I'm sure that you have experienced that at some point of like, you've seen too many things and suddenly you're like trying to sleep and it's like, wait, why am I just picturing what Susan ate for breakfast? Because I saw it on her story a few minutes ago. So it's one of those things that's like you can't process everything that you see, and your brain really does need downtime to kind of process it. So that's kind of my view in overstimulation as like a definition, I guess. And I think one of the big problems of being overstimulated as adults, and one of the big problems in our society, is that we don't allow ourselves to be bored anymore. And I think this is a really big problem. We don't allow ourselves just like gaps in our day. Think about when you're commuting to work, maybe you're sitting on the train. You can't just sit there in silence. That would be crazy. So what do? You're probably scrolling on social media. There's a gap in your day at any point. Maybe you're eating lunch. What do? You pull out your phone, you scroll on social media. Sometimes people are watching TV and scrolling on social media. Like, I think allowing ourselves to be bored and like slow down is actually really healthy and important, and it's something that I feel like we can't do anymore. We've become so accustomed to checking our phones, so accustomed to just like having an instant distraction that we can't handle silence. We can't handle gaps in our day. And the problem with that is then you're just constantly, even more so, bombarding your brain with new information. And again, overstimulating yourself. And when we're doing that, it's like you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. You're constantly feeling the need to like do something, right? It's like we can't just sit still because that's what we're used to and that's what we're allowing ourselves to be used to. And I just think this is so dangerous. You need gaps in your day just to allow yourself to process what you're seeing and allow yourself to like think your own thoughts. If you're constantly receiving information, you kind of just become this, I feel like, this zombie of what you see. You're not really thinking about what you're doing. You're not really intentional about what you're doing. So recently I decided to explore how I could kind of combat this feeling of overstimulation. And really over the past week, which I know is not a lot of time, but over the past week I've noticed a difference. I really prioritized keeping my phone kind of slightly out of reach and like consciously choosing to not be a consumer on social media. And so to go into some context, I've always had this kind of love-hate with social media. I really enjoy creating like video content, and social media can be fun, and it can be also fun to kind of catch up with friends. But what I don't like is that you get caught in the trap, because social media is addictive and you get caught in just like stories, you're scrolling, maybe on TikTok. Like TikTok, I've come to realize I don't think I like TikTok anymore. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, but like I was just feeling, I've always had this love-hate because it's like I want to be on social media, but I also don't want to consume. So like what is the balance there? And so I kind of realized this past week that, you know what, if I really work at being intentional, I can have social media to create and I can restrain myself from consuming. You just have to be very intentional about what you're doing. So I noticed this. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go on, post what I'm posting, and then get off. And one thing that was helpful was like, if I'm doing my podcast, I'm kind of creating clips ahead of time off of social media, right? Like I'll be editing them elsewhere. So then all I need to do is go in, post it, and get off. It's not like I get caught in it. And so I've been really exploring like, okay, can I do that? And is that sustainable? Because to be honest, like I just don't really care what people are doing all the time. I don't need to know. I don't need to know what you're doing all the time. I don't need to see what people are doing. I feel like even if you're happy with your own life, you can't help but compare yourself and feel inferior to the things that you're seeing. So-and-so's married, so-and-so's flying to Portugal, so-and-so ate a nice looking brunch. Like I just feel like I'm over it. I don't care. I don't want to be overstimulated with all this information. Like it's not healthy to me. And I just, again, I always go back to being intentional. How do I want to spend my time? Quite frankly, it's so sad that how many hours, like look at your phone right now, how many hours or minutes on average do you spend on social media a day? And think about that. Now like calculate that for the week. How much of your time are you wasting consuming other people's lives? I know this is not a new concept. We hear people talk about this a lot these days. But the problem is we get back into that trap and we're overstimulated and we feel like, again, we can't just be bored. So it's a natural thing to just pull out your phone and scroll. So you need to be intentional. You need to think about what you're doing. Last night, I really just didn't want to be on my phone. Yesterday, I spent a total of 7 minutes on Instagram for the entire day. And I thought that was pretty good. And I think it was like 15 minutes on TikTok, but I actually had posted a TikTok, so I was kind of just editing that. Anyways, so I was proud of myself for that. But last night I was bored. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to sit with this boredom. I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to be on my phone. So like, what should I do? And I'm looking around my apartment. And for a while, like I felt a bit uncomfortable. To be honest, I was a bit uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, like, I don't like this feeling of not knowing what I'm doing, of not feeling like I have something to do. And so what did I do? I kind of sat with it for a bit. I journaled already that day, so I didn't really want to journal. I didn't want to listen to music. Like, I actually just wanted to allow myself to be bored and kind of force myself to sit with it. And so I ended up finding a card deck. I played some solitaire. I got some stuff out to paint, and then I just wasn't in the mood. I was going to paint. But I played cards, and then I kind of just like sat there for a bit and like just existed and allowed myself to just kind of be still. And I think that's so important. And I'm realizing, like, even if it's, 20 minutes a day where you're doing yoga, or 20 minutes a day to meditate, or 20 minutes a day to just like sit in silence, I think it's so important to just separate yourself from social media, separate yourself from any distraction, and force yourself to just exist. Because you'll see it's a little uncomfortable at first, but I feel like that's the point. Think about how people used to live. People used to go their whole lives not knowing what people across the world are doing, not knowing what their friends are doing every single moment of every single day, and not feeling like they're constantly comparing themselves to these other people because you can't see it, right? And I think, obviously, we're not going to go back to that. Like, social media is not going to disappear. So I think it's, again, about being intentional. Like, I used to have this kind of all or nothing mindset with a few things, and social media was one of them, where I was like, I'm quitting social media. I don't like it. It's making me feel not great. I just don't want it. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm never going to go back on. And I actually didn't have social media for about 8 months. I want to say 8 or 9 months. And it was good. It was great. And I know that there's a lot of videos, even on YouTube, about people having quit social media and how it's changing their life. And I really think that quitting social media is, for a lot of people, a really positive idea. I think, as someone now who wants to be a bit of a creator, or like, I enjoy making my podcast, in some way, shape, or form, I think social media can be helpful. I also think about my Fight to End Cancer experience, and I really enjoyed being able to share that online, and that was one way to also get people to donate and kind of share what I'm doing. So in that sense, social media was beneficial for me. And so when I was living in France, I didn't have Instagram. I decided to take a break, but I was posting my vlogs on YouTube so my family and friends could still check in with me or see what I was up to. But again, it's all about, for me, this like balance, because I don't think it's realistic for me to say I'll never be on social media ever again. And I think I used to really struggle with this all or nothing mindset, where I felt like it needed to be one or the other, because I kept getting into the trap of, I'd go back on Instagram, it was fun for a little bit, and then it was like time consuming. Something else I've been kind of exploring is, in moments of boredom, instead of like opting to look at my phone or be on social media, or try to fill the gap with something a little bit mindless, is I try to like fill it with a task, like cleaning up something, doing something quick around the house. Maybe I'm just organizing, putting clothes away, or cleaning up my closet a little bit. Like, I think there's so many kind of mindful tasks that you can replace social media with, that, one, force you to do something, two, keeps you busy so you're still doing something, like you're not just sitting there bored being like, okay, I'm gonna twiddle my thumbs. However, it's like a good kind of in-between stage of like, okay, if you're not ready to just allow yourself to sit in silence, or it's like, okay, the silence is killing me, I can't do this, then like, get up and organize something. Get up and wipe your counters in your kitchen. Vacuum the floor. I don't know, fluff your pillows. Like, it could be anything small, just doing a small task. Go brush your teeth. Maybe you got stinky breath, go brush your teeth. Like, do something and like focus on that task. The biggest thing I've learned the past year, I've been practicing, I keep talking about this, is presence. Be where you are. If you're bored, just sit with it. Allow yourself to be there, okay? Allow yourself to just like enjoy your coffee. Go sit outside for a minute. Go for a walk. Like, you could do so many things without being connected to the internet. And I think just the whole point I'm trying to make, I guess, is how important it is to give yourself time to think, to give yourself gaps, and to allow yourself to like process the information you're consuming. I don't think that it's fair to say that social media is completely horrible and you should not be on there at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I think the more you allow yourself these gaps, the more you allow yourself to be present and just like be in the moment, you stop focusing more on what other people are doing. You can kind of let it go. Your mind can stop turning so fast. Like, it's just so important to allow yourself to slow down. So find a hobby that you like. I would suggest finding some sort of activity that you enjoy that's just completely disconnected. Maybe you like doing crocheting, maybe it's painting, maybe it's drawing, maybe it's cleaning. Cleaning could be a fun hobby. I kind of like cleaning because I love how I feel after my space is freshly cleaned. So if I'm stressed, I will be cleaning, and I like that. So I think that's kind of the point I want to make with overstimulation, is like, we do it to ourselves by not allowing ourselves these gaps in our day. And I think that those gaps are where we allow ourselves to slow down, reconnect with yourself. It's like you're allowing your mind and your body to kind of reconnect and catch up to each other. Because when you're constantly consuming, your brain cannot process it. There's too much happening. So allow yourself to just relax. So one other thing I want to get into, I don't know if this is a real thing or not, but I want to talk about being overstimulated, like socially. Because within the past few weeks, there was, maybe a few weeks ago, it was before I hurt my knee, but there was a few weeks ago where I think it was the first week of my summer vacation, and I was like, okay, I just want to see people, I want to be active, I want to go out, I want to do this and that, and like be social. But I remember feeling like, wow, I'm overstimulated socially. I have too many people texting me, too many plans on the go, and I just like can't handle it, and I want to just crawl into a hole and be by myself. So overstimulation socially. I just think this is an interesting concept. Again, I don't know if this is a real thing. I didn't look it up. I didn't do research on this. So this is just me talking about my experience. But I feel like this happens to me if I make too many plans, or I feel like I have too much going on. I get overwhelmed, or I feel like I just want space to be by myself, because I do love being alone. You guys know I really enjoy and value my alone time, and I've gotten to the point where I do like going and doing things alone as well. It's not just like I'm at home by myself, but I enjoy exploring by myself. I enjoy, I can be content without meeting up with someone and doing something. I could just go and do it myself. So obviously there's value in hanging out with people, and I have friends I'd love to see, but one thing I'm trying to explore is like, making a couple plans throughout the week, but then allowing myself to go with the flow and see if something pops up last minute. That's great. But if not, I'll be okay to just be alone. Because I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but when I make plans like every single day, like, you get to a point where you're kind of tired, or I feel overstimulated socially. And then I feel like, well, I don't want to cancel on people or cancel plans, because I don't know, I just don't like doing that. If I made a plan with someone, for the most part, I'd like to make sure I, hold true to that and not cancel on people. So I'd almost rather spread out my social engagements, but then allow for spontaneity. And like, hey, if something comes up and I'm in the mood, then yeah, let's do it. But otherwise, I don't want to feel like I'm making too many plans. So I guess the whole point of this podcast, the whole point of this episode is just like, allow yourself to slow down, try to be self-aware. Like, are you filling your gaps by just scrolling aimlessly on social media? And think about what it's doing to your brain and how much information you're consuming. And if you feel unhappy about certain things in your life, or you're feeling like, you know, your thoughts are like, wow, this person's doing this, that's so cool, I can't do anything like that, or any of those thoughts of like comparing yourself, take a break. Distance yourself, allow yourself to slow down and just be with yourself, because we need to be where we are and accept where we are. And actually, there's a quote I got on my phone today. It's a notification from an app. It's such a cute app. It's called Eternal Sunshine. And so I got this notification today, and I thought this would go with this episode of like the quote of the week. But it says, often the hardest thing to do is accept where you are, but it turns out to be the best thing you'll ever do, wherever you are. And I think that's so true, because we're often wanting to be in the next phase of our life. We're wanting the next thing, or we're thinking about something that we don't have yet. But when you can accept where you are and be present, then you will be more happy. You'll be at peace. You'll be content. And you're still working towards the goals that you want, but you're looking at life in terms of, what can I do today to help me get closer to those goals, rather than obsessing about the destination itself. Like, life is not a destination. Life is not like, here, once I do this, I'll be happy. You have to enjoy the process. You have to learn to enjoy the journey of life. And I think when we, again, allow ourselves to slow down, think about our thoughts, think about how you feel about the world, think about how, or just not even think, just allow yourself to be still and just be in the moment. Like, you allow yourself to slow down. You stop worrying or thinking so much about what other people are doing. And I think it's just a great skill to be content, be okay in stillness and in silence, because it's just really important for your brain and your body and your mind to connect. So I'm going to end this off here. I hope this made sense. I hope it wasn't too much of a ramble, but I really challenge you to spend less time consuming on social media. If you are someone who feels like you could cut down your screen time, maybe add an app limit to your phone, but explore this concept, explore slowing down, let yourself be bored and see how you feel, and then try to fill that boredom with like a different type of task. Okay, I hope you have a great week wherever you are, and I will chat with you soon. Bye!